Hello, this is Heather Hoffman, and I'm here today to share a fun fall card with you using the August 2020 Kit of the Month from Unity Stamp Company. I'm going to use that gorgeous detailed leaf. It's so incredible, and I had so much fun stamping with it today. I'm going to use Distress ink, and this is an example of where I started out with one plan, and my plan completely changed as I started. So I pull out a water mister here in a second, but I don't end up using, so just ignoring that as it goes by, because that ended up not being something I needed. I'm stamping on watercolor cardstock. My original plan was to kind of mist, or I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do, but as soon as I stamped this image, look at all of that incredible detail. Totally blew me away how well that stamped on the textured watercolor cardstock as well, with Distress ink, which quite often isn't something I necessarily plan on getting a beautiful impression with, but this image and the red rubber is just amazing. So I started off there with carved pumpkin, then I stamped again with mustard seed, and I'm going to stamp one more time in the bottom corner there with festive berries. And about now is when I was looking at it going, yeah, I can't ruin that detail. So instead of misting it or doing anything different like that, I ended up grabbing just a bowl of water in my brush and very carefully going around the edges, just barely touching the outer outline of that leaf. And what that does is it kind of softens that. The water is going to make the ink react and kind of spread out and blend out. So it kind of adds a little bit of a watercolor silhouette around the image, but it leaves all of that beautiful detail in the center of the leaves perfectly intact. So it was kind of a fun way to be able to it's just impossible for me to use Distress inks and not involve water somehow. So I had to kind of do it some way, but I really didn't want to mess up that intricate webbing on the leaves. They're so, I love looking at fall leaves, and it just looked so incredibly realistic that I was just kind of blown away and loved how it came out. So I just quickly went around to all of them like that. You can see it didn't take very long, blended it out a little bit, just to kind of soften all the colors and make sure there was a good little bit of a bleed around. And then I went ahead and pulled out a clear stamp block as well. Actually, I forgot I'm using a silicone mat there. So I just grabbed a smaller brush so I could add a few splatters of each color. Ideally, it might have been better to wait for these to dry, because I noticed since it was still wet, of course, they kind of bled out a little bit, but I kind of don't mind that effect either. So if you want more crisp splatters on there, feel free to wait until that first layer dries before you add. If you're okay with them bleeding around a little, go ahead and do them now and be impatient like I was. All right, now that that is done, I actually really truly am going to set this aside and let it dry nice and thoroughly. But there you can see just that beautiful background that we've created. So once that has a chance to fully dry, I will pull out a sentiment from that set there. I decided instead of one of the smaller ones, I used that large subway tile style one. Just kind of a perfect fun fall design. So now that that's fully dried, I'm going to pull out my MISTI. I'm going to line this stamp set up over that background that I've created. And I'm going to stamp this with black ink because I want it to show up really nicely on that colored background without any problems. So I'm using that black ink. Thanks to my MISTI, I'm stamping several times because this is a big image. And surprisingly enough, the watercolor cardstock was a little more noticeable here, the texture. So I really wanted that image super dark and black and crisp, so it showed up really well over that background. So I ended up stamping a total of 4 times just to make sure I had it really, really dark. And that right there is about as difficult as this gets. I trimmed that down a little and mounted it just on a white card base. Super fun, super detailed, and it totally feels like fall to me. Thanks so much for coming by today. Have a wonderful day.